Well, my dad passed away last October, so I've spent a lot of time in this last year really just thinking about family, thinking about the family that I grew up with, thinking about moments and memories that I have with my dad. And I was thinking about a memory this last week of when I was in high school. I remember talking to my dad about girls, trying to get some dating advice from him. And one of the things that he said to me, he said, "Son, if you don't like her family, if you don't get along with them, I wouldn't even bother. Like, it's not even worth the work." And he went on to say in that conversation, talking about family, he said, your friends will come and go in life, but one of the things that you will always have is your family. So he said, pick your family well, and you have to take care of your family. For me and my home, I grew up in a home with two loving parents that stayed together all their lives. I feel very fortunate for that. It wasn't a perfect home, but man, it was a home filled with love, and I know that's something that not everybody gets that growing up. And I got to tell you, family was always such a high value for us in the Hallberg home. I am technically one of 5 kids. I say technically because I have a twin brother named Charles. He's about 20 minutes older than I am. And then I grew up with 3 older sisters. So it's awesome. It's like growing up with 4 moms, But it's, one of the things that we were always taught growing up was that, man, you always look out for and you always protect your family. And honestly, you got to know this about my twin brother. We are not identical. Ever since we were about 5 years old, he has been bigger, stronger, taller than I am. So growing up, he did much more protecting of me than I did of him. And I was thinking about one such occasion where my brother really stood up for me. It was about 4th or 5th grade. I can't quite remember which it was. But my brother and I, we had developed this rivalry with a kid that I'll just call TJ today. Now, the thing about TJ is he was just different from my brother and I. For whatever reason, we did not like each other. We did not really get along. TJ kind of had a potty mouth. He talked about things at school that me and my brother were not supposed to talk about. And so it just kind of caused this conflict and this tension between us. But the thing that really kind of lit the fuse of this rivalry was TJ and I were like 2 of the most competitive kids on the playground, on the soccer field. And we always ended up on different teams for whatever reason, and we were always just getting at each other. And so I remember one specific afternoon at recess, TJ and I again on different teams on the soccer field. And there's this moment where him and we both go up in the air for a ball at the same time, and we collide in midair. And then I end up falling down on top of TJ. Well, I remember this moment. I'm looking down at TJ, and he's looking up at me, and he is mad as heck. I can see it in his eyes. And as I'm trying to get up off of him, he just takes his hand, he just slaps me across the face as hard as he can. And my reaction to that was what I did was I cried. I do not like conflict. I did not get in many fights as a kid. And so, you ever just you see a kid get so mad that they just cry? Like, that was me. Like, I got up and I walked away, and I'm like, tears are filling up in my eyes. I'm like, I can't believe you did that. Who slaps a person? A jerk. I didn't even mean to do it. And as I'm like doing this and I'm walking away, all of a sudden I feel this whoosh rush by me. And that wind was my brother Charles, who had seen the entire thing. And so TJ is still on the ground, but I turn around and I watch as my brother Charles sprints over. He grabs TJ by the shirt, lifts him like this up off the ground, proceeds to 360 him, and then slingshot him back to the dirt. And TJ just, bam, bounces off the ground. And poor TJ, I mean, you could tell the kid got the wind knocked out of him. He's sitting there, he's groaning, he's like, ugh, he's like curling up into a ball. And Charles goes, "You don't touch my brother." And I'm over there with like tears in my eyes, like, "Yeah, you don't mess with us," like. And, it's just like this moment that I don't know that I was ever closer or loved my brother more than that moment, I was like, that's what family's about, man. Like, family is there for each other. Family is supposed to protect each other. That's a big value for our families, that family is supposed to protect. And so maybe you grew up having a story pretty similar to that, or maybe you grew up wishing you had a story like that you had someone that looked out for you and protected you, and maybe you lacked that growing up. But I think for any of us as adults, and especially people that start having our own families, man, this is a value that we place for our kids. I tell my son and my daughter, you protect one another, you look out for each other, you stand up for one another, right? It's been really interesting the last, I'd say, maybe like 20 years just to see the way that families operate, kind of family dynamics in this world that we live. You know, we're in a world where we are connected more than ever before. We have more information than ever before, more ways to connect than ever before. But it seems like even with that, more and more people become more insulated and isolated. I don't know about you, but I get this feeling that's like, there's so much that is going on in the world. And there's so many like bad things going on in the world that we are just inundated with information. It gets to a point, it's like, there's so much going on. I feel like I can't possibly care about all these things that are out there. I just have to worry about me and my own and take care of them. And I would say, especially even in the last 10 years, as we think about just our world and culture and family dynamics, it does feel like and seem like things have gotten more and more extreme, hasn't it? Everything seems to be taken polarized from one end or to the other. And I see this behavior and this feeling in our communities and in our country really anymore. It's not that I can't care because there's so many things out there. I feel this sentiment a lot in our world. You know what, actually? I don't care. I don't care about what's going on in the rest of the world. Forget the rest of the world. I'm just going to worry about me, and I'm going to worry about mine. And that feeling, that sentiment isn't something that's just like out there in our community. I mean, we find it in the church as well. When we have people ask us questions like, why do we do prison ministry? Why do we bother? Aren't those people getting what they deserve? Shouldn't we be focusing more energy and time right here for our people? Why go to nursing homes? Why go to these senior living centers? What about our kids right here? And it's wild how quickly we can get things twisted, isn't it? I think about this rivalry that my brother and I had with TJ, and I think back on it, and I'm just like, man, it was just, for me, I look back and I was like, it was stupid and it was ignorant. Here was a kid that he grew up very different than me. As I went to middle school and I went to high school with TJ, I learned that he came from a very, very broken family. And it just made me wish that all those years later that I wouldn't have wasted my time hating him and calling him names just because he was a little bit different than me. One of the things that we're talking about the next couple weeks, or really our focus the next couple weeks, is how do we get our hearts and our minds off of just ourselves and just our little corner of the world? And how can we see the bigger picture of what God is calling us to do and what it looks like to follow him in our community? And the place that we're choosing to focus is really the foster care crisis that we have here in Sedgwick County. And I tell you, man, it really is a crisis. If you look at the statistics, there's over 400,000 kids in foster care across the United States, and half of that, 200,000, are in 5% of the counties around America. And it is such a problem in Sedgwick County that really we are part of that 5%. I think a lot of people, they get this idea that, well, if a kid is in foster care, it's because they have a bad parent. They have a parent that doesn't care, that doesn't love them. They have a parent that either abused them verbally, physically, sexually. Something went wrong. But the biggest reason that kids actually end up in foster care is because of poverty. They have families that love them, that want to provide for them, that want to protect them just like we do our own families. But for whatever reason, they lack the resources, they lack the relationships, they lack the ability to help keep their kids out of that system. And so the question for us over the next couple weeks is, how do we start to become part of the solution for this crisis that we have going on in our own backyard? This tendency to kind of isolate and insulate and worry about our own people, it's nothing new. Even Jesus' disciples struggle with this as well. And so we're going to find ourselves in the Gospel of Matthew today, chapter 25. If you have a Bible, I want to encourage you can go ahead and turn there. If you'd like, you can turn in the Pathway Church app. We've got the message notes there. But as we're looking there, as you're turning towards Matthew 25, what we've got here in Matthew chapters 24 and 25 is called the Olivet Discourse. And what's happening is it's a Tuesday afternoon, maybe evening, and Jesus and his disciples, they're taking the trip from Jerusalem to Bethany. It's about a 2-mile hike. They go up the Mount of Olives, over and down into Bethany. And it's here that Jesus pauses to have a conversation with his disciples. And they're having this conversation because the disciples are still struggling to understand what kind of kingdom did Jesus come to build? What kind of kingdom is he looking to establish? And this Tuesday is actually the Tuesday of what we call Passion Week or Holy Week. This is the week that Jesus, on Friday, he will die on the cross. On Sunday, he will raise from the grave. This is Jesus' final week before that happens. And so you kind of go backwards and you look at the events of what's happening so far, and you start to understand why the disciples are struggling a little bit with what kind of kingdom is Jesus building. You go back to Sunday, and Jesus enters into Jerusalem on a donkey, right? And people are shouting, "Hosanna, Hosanna to the Son of David." They're laying palm branches at his feet. I mean, they are welcoming him in as a king. And then on Monday, Jesus goes into the temple, and he sees the money changers, he sees the lenders, and he very famously starts driving them out. He's got a whip, he's driving people out, he's flipping tables, right? And so Jesus is cleansing the temple. He says, "My Father's house is to be a house of prayer. You have violated it. You're messing it up." And he drives everybody out of the temple. And then on Tuesday, Jesus spends a lot of his time during the day on Tuesday really debating and arguing with the religious leaders. And so it's at this point, by Tuesday afternoon, things have kind of hit like this religious fever pitch there in Jerusalem. It's like the people are about ready to make Jesus king. I mean, they are about ready to overthrow the Romans and do whatever Jesus says. And so Jesus and the 12 decide, hey, maybe it's best for us that we don't stay in Jerusalem tonight. Maybe we should actually go to Bethany, let things cool down. We'll go hang out with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus over there in Bethany instead. And so the disciples, they're on this high of like, man, Jesus is the guy. He's going to do it. He's going to finally overthrow the Romans. He's going to bring Jerusalem and Israel to be this superpower again on the earth. We're going to show all these other nations around us, all these godless people, who God is. We're going to put them in their place. And so kind of as they are ascending the Mount of Olives there in chapter 24, it says as they're leaving Jerusalem, the disciples are they're just pointing out the buildings and how awesome they look. They're pointing out how great the temple looks. Only 10, 15 years earlier, King Herod had made some improvements to the temple, and so it looks good, about like as good as it ever has. And so they're just admiring this symbol of their people and who they can become. And it's in this moment, as they're kind of there, it seems, at the top of the hill on the Mount of Olives, they pause and they start having this conversation. And Jesus, it seems to be that he understands what's going on in their hearts. He seems to understand what they're thinking. And he says, you know what? You know all these buildings that you're looking at, that you're admiring? He says, all of it's going to be destroyed. In fact, he says, not a single stone is going to be standing on another by the time that it's done. Because you have this idea, it seems Jesus, like you have this idea that what I've come to do, this kingdom that I've come to establish, that it's going to be glorious and it's going to be glamorous and it's going to be better than it's ever been. And Jesus actually goes on there in chapter 24 to tell them that, like, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be awful. Many of you are going to die in terrible ways following me. That it's going to be so bad that women are going to wish that they weren't pregnant and having kids because things are just going to be so bad in those days. And so Jesus is trying to help him. He's like, you've got a wrong idea of the kingdom that I'm trying to establish. And he goes on there in 24 and 25, and he gives them two different parables. And really the main idea of both these parables is don't get caught unprepared. Don't get caught unready, not knowing who I am and what I'm doing. And then we get to the end of 25, and Jesus has this moment where he's talking about there's going to be a moment at the end of time where God is going to bring all the people together. And what he's going to do is he's going to start separating them into basically two piles. He says you're going to have your sheep on the right who are going to go to eternal life, and then you're going to have the goats on the left who are not. And so this is where we pick up here in Matthew 25 in verse 34. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger and you invited me into your home. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me." Then these righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you?' And the king will say, 'I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me.'" I think Jesus starts with those on the right. He starts with the sheep because for the disciples, at least, in this small group, they would have heard that and they would have said, "We are definitely sheep," right? We've got the right shepherd. We've got Jesus. We've been following him around, right? Like he is the guy. We are definitely on the side of sheep. But the problem is they still just don't have really quite the idea of what is it the shepherd has actually come to do. Again, this mindset of like Jesus, when they're thinking about the kingdom that he's come to establish, they've got the idea in their mind of thrones, of power, of boundaries, of conquering, of setting things straight. And Jesus, that's not the kind of kingdom that he's coming to establish. But you think of not even just the disciples, other people that would read this in the future, right? Other Israelites, Jews, hearing the story of Jesus for the first time. Many Jews believe that, because we are God's chosen people, at the end of all things, we are definitely going to be saved. We will definitely be saved. I mean, we've been here, we got all the things through the ups and downs, like we have been on God's side, technically, even though we haven't maybe obeyed always like we should, but we are God's people. And especially, when we look around at the rest of the godless countries around us, the way that the Greeks and the Romans operate, of anybody, we should be the ones that should be saved. And so it really becomes a question of what are you putting your confidence in? For the disciples, for the Israelites, and even for us, I would ask us that question. When it comes down to it, what do we put our confidence in? The fact that I go to church, that I've been baptized, that I serve? What am I doing that I say like this? Well, I'm definitely in the right, Lord, aren't I? Am I not doing what you've asked me to do? But Jesus says, you have this idea again of my kingdom, of thrones, of power, of drawing lines. But my idea of the kingdom is very different. And so he goes on here to now tell us about the goats there in verse 41. It says, "The king will then turn to those on the left and say, 'Away with you, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his demons. For I was hungry, and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty, and you didn't give me a drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't invite me into your home. I was naked, and you didn't give me clothing. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me.' Then they will reply, 'Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and not help you?' And he will answer, 'I tell you the truth, when you refuse to help the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were refusing to help me.'" Those are pretty sobering words when we look at them, isn't it? I don't know about the disciples and how they measured themselves when they heard that passage, but I know when I read that passage, I have to admit for myself, you know what? I look a whole lot more like a goat than I really want to admit. That more often than not, I seem to be on that end than on the end of the sheep. Because it's easier to focus on me and mine and taking care of what's right in front of me and the things that I feel like I can control than it is in the greater needs in our community. I got to tell you this, I don't think it's any accident that Jesus repeats himself verbatim in this passage. It's almost like your disciples, you are listening, but I don't think you are really, really getting it. Jesus said, again, this idea that you have of kingdoms, of power, of thrones, of drawing lines, Jesus says, you know what? People are not obstacles in my kingdom. Actually, people are the mission in my kingdom. That I've not come to establish this kingdom that has to do with land and wealth and power and dominating. The kingdom that I've come to establish is through hearts and it is through people. That is the territory of Jesus' kingdom. And he says, I need you to really, really understand this is what I've come to do. These other people around you that you see as obstacles, that you see as something to conquer, these people that you see as someone to show who is right and what's wrong, Jesus says, no, what I've come to call you to do is they are the mission field. People are the mission. And I love that, when we look at the disciples and we look at the early church, they really took this to heart. When they went out and they shared Jesus, it was to the most vulnerable, it was to the defenseless, it was to the unloved, the unseen, and the communities that they went to. Those were the very first people that they took the gospel to. Because they realized something. Jesus does not separate himself from the vulnerable in this passage, does he? In fact, what does he say? He says, basically, that's me. That's who I am. This is the work that I have come to do. And so this was the staple of the early church, because really, as the disciples understood, and as we need to understand today, is at one time, we were the unlovable. We were the unseen. We were the defenseless. We were the vulnerable. And there was a moment where God invited us into the family to be a part of his kingdom and what he's doing. And so now God is challenging us. He says, now what I've done for you, you need to go and do the same. And so our work as a church is, how do we expand the family? This is really what God is calling us to expand the family. And so for us at Pathway Church, when we look out at our community that God has given us, Sedgwick County, and we say, who are the vulnerable, the defenseless, who are the needy in our community, the place that we've really chosen to focus is on this foster care crisis. As we started today, you watched that video. It said there's over 1,300 kids in foster care in Sedgwick County. I want you to know we got updated numbers Friday. It's actually bigger than that. It's now up over 1,500. We just didn't have the time to be able to edit the video before the weekend. And I say that to you, I want you to realize this about what's going on in our community. This is not a problem that is under control. This is not a problem that is getting fixed and looking better. This is a problem that is growing in our community. It's only getting worse. And again, these kids that end up in the foster care system, a majority of them, it's not because of abuse, of some wrongdoing. There is some of that. But for most kids that end up in foster care, it's simply poverty. They don't have somebody to stand in the gap to help them, to prevent them from ending up in that situation. And I got to tell you, the statistics for kids that end up in foster care, it's absolutely heartbreaking what happens. Statistics would tell us that 50% of our current homeless population in the United States at one time were in foster care. If we look at those that are victims of human trafficking and sex trafficking, 60% of those at one time spent time in foster care. If we look at those that are incarcerated, 75% of people spent time in jail, incarcerated, in prison, at one time were in foster care. And you take that even further, 90% of people on death row at one time in foster care. And so the question is for all of us is how can we start standing in the gap for these families and preventing that tragedy for them and these kids being taken from homes, again, from people that love them, that want to provide, want to protect, but simply aren't able to. And so as a church, what we want to do, if we're going to expand the family and say, this is the family, this is the community that God has given us, now our job, if we say family protects, our job is to defend the family. The way that we've been doing that here at Pathway Church is through our care portal. And if you've been here a while, you've probably heard of the care portal before, but if not, if you're like, what is that? I want you to know this. The care portal, what we get to do is we get a chance to partner with our local school counselors, resource officers, really the people that are closest to these families, and they tell us, man, what do these families need? How can we help these families that are in these vulnerable situations? And then they're able to share those with us, so that our community here at Pathway and other people in our community have a chance to be able to meet those needs for those kids and for those families. And so what I want to do is I want you to consider signing up to be a part of the care portal, signing up to help and be part of the solution for these kids and these families. If you're at one of our local campuses today, you can go, there's a table outside today that you can go to. But if not, you can. There's a place in the app. You can look, it says foster care resources. You can look there in the Pathway app. You can get more information. But I want you to sign up for Care Portal. And when you do, here's basically what happens. You'll get sent emails occasionally with the needs for these families. And there's about 3 different ways that you can respond. So one of the things that they'll do is in that email, they will list what are the specific needs for this family. If they need beds, or they need bikes, or they need dishware, or whatever it may be. And so one of the things that you can do, you can say, hey, if I have that resource, or if I want to go get that resource to donate, you can donate for that through the Care Portal. If you're not able to go and get those resources, we do have a Care Portal response team that goes and gets many of those things. Many people, what they choose to do, there's an option there that says, hey, this is what it costs to cover these things that the family needs. And you can just give of your finances, you can give of your resources for those families. But here's the third thing that I really like about Care Portal. I'll be honest, if you sign up for Care Portal, you get quite a few emails about needs for families in our communities. Like I said, this is a big problem. It should not be surprising to us that there are a lot of needs. I don't know, for me, the first time I signed up, I was like, this is kind of overwhelming. I can't provide, I can't help for all these needs. But one of the things that it does is it gives you just a little glimpse, a little story of what is going on in this family's life. Why do they have these needs? What is going on? And what I love about that, it gives a great opportunity for us as a church to say, hey, you know what? If I can't give my resources, I can give my time, and I can pray for this family. I can add that to my prayer list. I can say a quick prayer for them, that I'm making sure that I'm connecting my heart to the greater community that God has given me. And so here's our I will statement that I want to share with you today. Here it is. I will defend the vulnerable with my time or resources. I want to encourage you today, if you feel like God has been stirring in your heart that man, I should take that step to care for the greater community that God has given me, go sign up for that Care Portal today. Whether you do that in the app, whether you do that if you're one of our local campuses today, you get a chance to be able to go out and sign up and do that. I want you to take that step because God is doing awesome work through the Care Portal team. I want to share with you a story of Michelle. She's one of the members of our Care Portal response team at the Westlink campus. And I just really want to help you understand the heart of what they're doing and what it looks like and the kind of difference that it's making. Here's what Michelle says. She says, one of the requests that sticks with me the most is helping a single mom of 5 who has been undergoing chemo for the last year. The oldest is 14, the youngest is 5. Mom has very little support. She said her family has basically been non-existent, and the only help that she has had was from caseworkers. When I had a chance to meet her, she said all that she really wants is a friend to have coffee with. I love coffee, so I told her we were meant to be friends, and I am so honored that I get to continue to walk with her and her family while also getting to continue to meet her needs so that Jesus' love is shining through. I love this last bit that she shared. She said, it's not about how many people we serve or any quotas that we make. We just want people to feel the love of Jesus through us. Man, I love that. I think it's easy for us when we look at the problems in our communities and in our world, but this just feels insurmountable. Feels like, what difference would I actually be making? But for Michelle, for her to say, you know what? There's at least one that I can go and I can make a difference for. There's at least one family that I can go and I can show them what the love of Jesus, the kingdom of heaven, what that looks like here on earth. So my challenge for all of us is for us in the next couple of weeks here to get out of our own way and to be a part of the bigger family, the bigger mission, the bigger challenge that God has for us in our community. And so I want you to do right now, I want you to bow your heads. We're going to go into this moment of prayer. I want you to close your eyes and pray with me. And, as you've been listening today, if you feel like God has stirred in you and moved in you to say, you know what? I want to do something about this. I want to be part of the solution for this crisis that we have in our community. If you say, I'm going to take that step today, I just want you to raise your hand and say, hey, God, I'm committed. That I'm going to take that step, that I'm going to figure out how to be part of welcoming more families in our community into the kingdom. Raise your hand and show God and say, hey, I'm doing that. I'm going to go take that step. Awesome. Thank you. Let me pray for you guys. God, I just thank you for my brothers and sisters, Lord, that how you're moving in their hearts this week. God, forgive us because so often we make it about ourselves. It's easy to focus on us. It's easy to focus on what we consider ours and our own. But Lord, there's a broader community and family out there that needs to see who you are and the light that you give. So, Lord, I'm thankful for my brothers and sisters today that said that they are going to take that step and be obedient to you. We're going to keep our heads bowed, our eyes closed. We're going to stay in this moment of prayer. And I want to give you a chance today. If you've never had the opportunity to make Jesus the leader and savior of your life, I want to give you the opportunity to do that. You know, as we've been talking about the broken and the defenseless and the vulnerable in our community, I know that there's probably someone here that's exactly how you felt. Broken, unlovable, unseen. And if there's anything that scripture showed us today, it's that to God, you are not unseen. To God, you are not unlovable. That he sees you, that he knows your name, and he wants to show you life and love like you've never experienced before. He wants to welcome you into the family. And so if you'd like to make that decision to follow Jesus today, what I want to ask you to do is just raise your hand right now to say, God, I want to be a part of your family. That I want to make that decision to follow you. Raise your hand and tell God, man, I don't want to be broken anymore. Awesome. If you want to do that, I want you to say this prayer with me in the quietness of your heart. God, I recognize that I need you. I've been broken. But God, I see that only you can heal me. So thank you, God, for seeing me and loving me and sending your son Jesus to die so that I can have a relationship with you, that I can know you and the life that only you can give. Thank you for the gift of your son, Jesus. God, I just thank you today, Lord, for just the work that you're doing in our hearts and in our community. God, forgive us because we get so selfish, we get so tied up in our own worlds. It's so natural and so easy for us. But God, I thank you that you're so big. And you've called us to a bigger mission, a bigger family than we have right now. So God, may we go out this week carrying the torch of your light, not our own, to these families and to those that need it in our community. God, we thank you for Jesus, who's the ultimate light. And it's in his name that we pray all these things. Amen.